Welcome back to the podcast and to the latest instalment of Two Blues Tuesday. Make sure to like and subscribe for your weekly dose of all things Chelsea. Myself and Mr. C Money Picks are here every single Tuesday night talking all things Premier League football. And yes, this is the penultimate Two Blues Tuesday before the return of the Premier League. This week, we will be getting a bonus episode with our full Premier League predictions for the 25-26 campaign, as well as Charms's final FPL chopping it up with Charms ahead of the deadline on Friday. But today we are here to talk about Chelsea's pre-season, a very brief pre-season. It seems like we've been talking nothing but Chelsea's pre-season for the last couple of months, but you could be forgiven for not knowing that the Club World Cup was last season, was the 24-25 campaign, and Chelsea's pre-season has consisted of just 2 games, both of which were played at Stamford Bridge this weekend. I was lucky enough to be in attendance on Friday and get to see Esteval Willian in the flesh. And Charms, let me tell you, there will be a 5-minute segment talking about just how unbelievable this brother is in the flesh. But before we get into it, obviously 2 massive wins, and Charms, that is now 2 losses in 18 games for Chelsea, both of which we had a man sent off. Shout out Nicholas Jackson each and every time. But Mr. C Money, we must be, not just off the back of this pre-season, but off this recent run of form, off these last 3 months, we've got to be feeling very positive about next week's game against Crystal Palace right now.
Lads, I don't think you've ever seen me sit in my chair as relaxed and as composed and as sort of donnish as I feel at the minute. I mean, the way in which we've been kicking ball has been nothing short of sublime. I mean, when I can't remember the last time you could get 11 minutes of highlights out of a Chelsea match, and it feels like that's the case. It feels like every time we're going forward, there's just something fun going on. I mean, I like, attempting scissor kicks from Cole Palmer, just having fun out there, just doing what we want. I mean, when I'm struggling to think who our best 11 is, and not because of who's good enough, who's better than who? Everyone's just quality and class. I mean, I was thinking in the first half of the game, yeah, João Pedro is going to have to be the 9. Look at the way he's bullying centre-backs, making those runs, winning headers and finding the space. By the end of the game, I was like, maybe it's Liam Delap. I don't know. It's like they're just, everyone is just so quality. I've not felt this. I haven't had this much belief in a Chelsea side being able to not just, I think we're going to get top 4 this season. I think we're going to win the league. I do. I really, honestly do. And I know it might be, obviously I am a Chelsea fan and I'm looking into it from a very large perspective of hope. But I genuinely, I believe we can,
There's no reason why not. There's no reason why not with the players that we have, the way that we're playing at the moment. I think obviously a lot of variables, but I think two constants that we need, and 2 players that had excellent games, particularly against AC Milan, but have both been excellent recently, is going forward Cole Palmer, but then Reece James, particularly solid on Sunday against AC Milan. I think Salamakas, if that's his name for AC Milan, was their best player far and away, and Reece James pocketed him every single time. How important is it, not just for Cole Palmer, who obviously we've seen how important it is for him to be performing, but with all the players that Chelsea have and all the new faces that we brought in, how important is it to have Reece James playing at his best consistently?
I need to see 10, 15 games in a row before I start really having the hope. I mean, we know the ability Reece James has, and we know what his weakness is. It's physical. He ends up getting injured and going out for periods of time. And I'm not really willing to have the same faith in Malo Gusto, but I just think that when Reece James is on form, I don't think there's a right back in the world better than him. And I think that we see that every single time. It's not just his ability defensively and his insane amounts of energy and cardio. It's the things like, his set piece ability and his ability to pass the ball, distribute, play long passes, short passes. I think he's quintessential to this Chelsea team's brilliance and our excellence and us winning tournaments and going far in European tournaments. It relies on, as you said, Reece James and Cole Palmer. But I think that particularly Reece James, I think he's so important to this club. And once again, there's conversation about where Cole Palmer is in his as the best 10 in the world. I think that there's a few people you can consider and compare with, but Reece James, I think, is far and away the best right back on his day.
Oh, 100%. And I think the game against Milan on Friday was the most right back we've seen him. So often
Hmm
we've seen him at right centre back and
hmm
inverting. And I think we will still see that from him this season. Obviously, Maresca's been very vocal about how good he is in centre mid. But I do feel like with the addition of Andre Santos, you've obviously got Esugo, Cucurella bringing that energy in from left back. I feel like with Enzo and Caicedo, the players I've just mentioned as well, you've got so much energy in there that you aren't having that same physical exertion. You aren't having that same kind of stress put on Reece James, which, like you said, could give him that 10, 15 game run this season.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that like another important thing is, you look at the Club World Cup final, he's playing on the right side of two DMs, and when he was still able to drop back and make all of these defensive interferences and really hold himself a force in that game. And now that we're seeing him kind of go back to the bread and butter playing in the right back role, when we know how Cucurella likes to do it, he likes to dart up and basically be a left mid for the whole game and then rely on his ability to get back in there. When we slip backwards, two centre backs drift off and Reece James goes and acts as sort of that right hand side to a three. I think it's borderline impossible to make it down that side. I mean, as you said, we saw Selemakers every time he was getting the ball, he was trying to take it, touch it, make a direct pass, try and run, and Reece was not having it. He was forcing the ball to go backwards. And when that is the case, it's so difficult to break down a team which at its core is a defensive team in Chelsea.
Yeah, but I mean, you say that. I think even in pre-season, we've seen a little bit of a shift. I mean, the intensity from the off, we've never really been an aggressive pressing team. With João Pedro, that seems to have been turned on its head. 2 goals in 7 minutes against AC Milan. We've been really, really going at them. And I do think, I mean, obviously, we still have I don't want to call it a problem because in pre-season, when you're a couple of goals up, I'm not going to complain if you sit back. You've already done what you need to do. But I think we could see a very different Chelsea or many different Chelsea sides this year in that, you've got the dynamic to do the pressing game with both João Pedro and Delap. They're both very, very intense, both very willing runners. João Pedro is a little bit more willing to link up, but that's when you need, you use him when you need a little bit more intricate in and around the box kind of link up play. It does seem like Chelsea have got now not just good quality depth in almost every position, but we have multifaceted talents. We are able to switch the positions, and we saw Enzo Maresca, tweaking the formation, tweaking the lineup last season, which was definitely one of the strongest things about him in the first half of the year. But it's been a constant on our channel and with a lot of Chelsea fans that he tends to be getting found out a lot more in the second half of the season. But I think, like I just said, 2 losses in 18 games, 16 wins out of 18 games. It seems like we really have turned a corner. And another individual that seems like he might have turned a corner. I don't want to say for sure because look, it could well be a Cucurella situation where we are starting to lap up a player that we have absolutely despised for the best part of 2 years. But Robert Sanchez, 3 clean sheets in the Club World Cup, including against PSG. Another clean sheet the other day against Leverkusen, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if Jorgensen played in goal or not. But
I think
it
it was
seems
Jorgens.
like even with, you mentioned just off stream that Gianluigi Donnarumma may be explored as a market opportunity. Seems like Maignan is off the list. But Chelsea still do seem very, very happy with Sanchez as number one, Jorgensen as number two, and then I'm assuming bringing Penders into the fold next season. Do you think Sanchez is kind of has turned that corner and is now, and we are now looking at him as we have Cucurella in that he can redeem himself, or are you still very much as soon as Penders is ready, get this Muppet out my club?
Well, it's a rock in a hard place, right? Because I feel like with a player like Cucurella, he had to do so much groundwork to really find himself back into into that loving atmosphere. And I think that obviously going away and what he did at the Euros, where he was excellent, I think really helped him. It's very similar to Pedro Neto. He's gone off, he played some international football, looked really sharp, come back in, continued to look sharp, and is now in that question to hold down that position. I don't see a world where Robert Sanchez has the opportunity to like go on that international stretch and find himself. And we're just relying on the games that we're able to give him. And although he has been good, he has been really good as of recent. I can't say that's dissimilar to how he was in points in the season. There were points in the season where he did look really good and he did make some really good saves and he had some really good games. but the high highs are matched with some seriously low lows, and I've seen the distribution being a massive problem. It doesn't seem like that's really changed. It's just kind of when he's distributing change, he's just hoofing it up a lot more. Like I just there's something about him which I still feel relatively uneasy with. I think it's the lack of the consistency, knowing that he is just a stinker away from going back to default, which once again we've seen in the past. I don't want to just sit here and waffle about Mike Penders because I could do that, and I do love the guy. And as you said, well, as I've said multiple times on this show, can't wait for the guy to come into the fold. I think he's the next Courtois on the mend, and I think we could really do with that. But if you were to ask me, what would I rather between Gianluigi Donnarumma and Robert Sanchez? I'd probably laugh and spit in your cup of tea because I don't think it's too much of a question. I think Donnarumma is one of the better goalkeepers in world football, and I would love him at the club now. And I just think that obviously a little bit of tension there between Chelsea and Donnarumma post the Club World Cup final, but football is football and money talks. So in the end of the day, we've got Garnacho who is sitting now doing the whole arrogant thing, twerking to come to Chelsea now. So it's funny how things happen, isn't it?
Someone said
Um,
earlier he might fail his medical because of his vaping. I would have imagine he failed his medical because of like, oh yeah, just, that
Because of
would
a bit
be
of
the most
strawberry
typical.
ice.
Honestly, I'd fall to my, I would convert to Christian. I would praise the Lord. I would be at church within the minute. I would not even have to finish reading the tweet. I would be down to my local place of worship. But I don't think anybody would disagree, obviously, that Donnarumma is an upgrade on Sanchez. And I'm going to need a yes or no answer from you. I know we can sit here and talk about goalkeepers
Oh,
for years. I'm going to need a yes or no answer from you. As we've heard time and time again over the last couple of weeks, Jamie Carragher and many other people say Chelsea cannot win the league with this goalkeeper. Can Chelsea win the league if Sanchez starts as number one?
yes, I do believe so. I think he's got enough defensive strength in front of him, particularly what I've seen with Hatter coming into the fold. Defense I saw on the back end of last season, players like Trevor Chalobah on the constant improvement. Although I do think that there is room for improvement, I don't think that he is necessarily worse than a Kasper Schmeichel or other goalkeepers that we have seen hold the number one for 38 games and win a league. I do believe that he would be just about good enough.
Yeah, I think I agree. And what you said, the one thing of all the things that he has wrong, the distribution, I think everything can be worked on except for those bozo moments, those ridiculous mistakes, those lapses of concentration, Aaron Ramsdale-esque. You ain't ever going to get those out of his game, and that's what worries me. But like you said, I think we've got just enough in front of them. And obviously, we've spoken about the fullbacks at length. Cucurella, one of, if not the best left back in the Premier League at the moment. And Reece James, on his day, the best right back in the world. But between them, Chelsea face a little bit of a dilemma as Levi Colwill this week has been ruled out for the majority of the season with an ACL injury. Wes Fofana, still talking a lot of shit on social media. We're going to need to see 15, 20 games straight back to back from him before I can sit here and say that he is part of this centre back set up. But Charms, do you think that we need to go back in the market for another centre back? We've already had Maresca being vocal about Badia Shiel coming back at September, how he wants him to play a part. I also am a firm believer in Josh Achimpong. I think in pre-season he's been one of my standout performers, and I think while it's not ideal, if we are looking for a replacement for Colwill short term, we've just signed Hatto, we've got Tosin Chalobah, and we've got Achimpong. Do you think we need to go back into the market for a centre back, or are we good for now?
It just depends on the plan long term, I reckon. Honestly, I think that I wouldn't be mad at another centre back, particularly a really high level centre back rather than a rotation. It feels like all the centre backs we've got at the club now, if they're not struggling to stay fit, like a Colwill, like a Fofana, they're just still in that developmental phase, or they're just not good enough. Developmental being that Trevor Chalobah, not good at, and maybe even a toss in, and not good enough being a Badia Shield, if I'm being totally honest. And with Achimpong, once again, I group him in with that more sort of in his developmental stage. And from what I've taken from his game, from the Chelsea I've watched in pre-season, I think he's a little bit better going forward than he is defensively at the back, and I think that maybe just that stalwart, get your 2 feet stuck in, you know, proven centre back. It's why it really gets on my nerves that we got rid of Rudiger in the way that we did. You know what I mean? I think that at the time that we got rid of him, I thought it's exactly the type of profile we could have kept in the club and what we needed. And I still think about that, and even with a player like Tomori, I still think the same thing. Even though he was maybe a little bit not as sharp, I think that we let we let some good guys go for peanuts that we should have just kept, or on a free that we should have kept in because they were so important at just being that rock at the back. And when you're signing in a player like Tosin, who's 27, 28, and he's just a pinch just off of being that class that I need in the centre back. I think that maybe one more could be a good idea.
If we don't go into the market and sign, who do you think? Let's take Cole out the equation, but everybody else, assuming they're fit, Hato, Badiashile,
Yeah.
we'll assume Disasi's out the picture as well. Who are you starting as your, assuming we're going for a back four, who's your best centre back pairing?
Yeah, I find it really difficult to answer because obviously there are so many questions about fitnesses and who's on what, if you will. I think that Joel Hatton on the right side of a centre back pairing is not a bad shout. I mean, I know that he is traditionally a
What I
fullback,
was going to say,
but
what two left feet?
he's got he's traditionally a fullback, but he can play anywhere across that back line: left back, centre back, left centre back, right centre back. I like it. I honestly do. I don't see a problem with him. And once again, I might need to see a little bit more of him, how he connects with these other players behind him. But I've got no problem with it. And it wouldn't be the first time that we've done that with all the left-footed centre backs in the world, would it be? So I know that Maresca is not necessarily impartial to the idea, but yeah, I don't mind him there. And on the other side, my preference has always been West Fofana. But I think Trevor Chalobah is very consistent as well. And once again, Tosin, I think that you know what you're getting when he plays there. So although it can be a little bit of a revolving the wheel, the only person I'm really feeling at the minute is a big 6 foot lump who I would give the 85 pace to in Joel Hatter.
Fair enough. What brand new into the team? You think still throw him in off the deep end? 19 years old.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. He's captained his team before. He knows what it's like to be a leader at such a young age. He's dominant. I like him in the air. Uh, Big boy, very fast. I just think it's that new generation of sort of centre back, and I would be happy to give him starts.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against that, but I do think if you are going to start Hato, I mean, I'm assuming his left side is his preferred if he's on the out of the two, and I think if you are going to start him, you're going to have to start him with someone a little bit more experienced. And I really like Trevor Chalobah. I think we've got to give him his dues. He's been a model professional, exceptional leader, an
Yeah.
exceptional part of the club for ever since he got called back from Crystal Palace in January. So I think I'd be happy with starting him, and then yeah, Fofana. Like we said, we need to get him up to speed. I'm not expecting him to start all 38 games. I'm not even expecting him to start 20 if I'm being completely honest. But if we can work him in with Jorel Hato, Tosin's there to provide that experience when we need. And also you've got Josh Achimpong for if and when we need to go to 3 or 5 at the back. All of these defenders are defenders that can play in multiple different setups as Maresca likes them. And also, as you kind of said with Josh Achimpong, striding forward. Wes Fofana, also a ball carrier. Joro Hato, ball carrier as well. So, you've got those Trevor Chalobah, Tosin, those more conservative, a little bit more experienced, more kind of deep lying defenders who can do the last man job and dictate. But then you've also got those younger, aggressive centre backs. The one I'm interested to see most, I think, is Badiashile, and that's just purely because I rated him incredibly highly when he first joined. He obviously had a massive drop off. And everybody kind of just wrote him off. But Maresca has been very vocal about bringing him back into the team, how he can play a big part. And I do like a left-footed centre-back because, we're all so used to seeing the right-footed centre-backs and everyone says, oh, you can't play two left-footed centre-backs. Everyone played two right-footed centre-backs for 50 years. So I'd like to see as many different combinations as we can. I think we still will have a few different combinations before we figure out who our best centre back pairing is. But there's definitely a few suggestions. Let us know in the comments who you think the best Chelsea centre back pairing is. But moving forward into centre midfield, obviously we all know Chelsea's preferred or probably best centre midfield pairing is going to be Enzo and Caicedo. But Chelsea are blessed, as we said earlier, to have depth in multiple positions, and centre midfield is definitely one of them. We obviously had Romeo Lavia playing a bit part last season, still a few injury worries. He's still not fully fit, and that's a little bit of a concern going into the new year. But two players who look roaring and ready to go are Andre Santos and Dario Asugo, both of whom have had fantastic last couple of games against Leverkusen and AC Milan. Obviously, Andre Santos with a lovely little flicked assist for Liam Delap on the fourth goal against Milan on Sunday. Charms, out of those three, Lavia, Esugo, and Andre Santos. What's your feeling of expectation from those three? And also, if you can give us a pecking order, who do you prefer out of those three?
I knew that was coming. It's for me, like Asugo when he got signed, I was very confused. I think you were as well. I didn't really understand why we would be going in for him when we had players that, like Lavia, who we'd been trying to rotate in, and they didn't really fit because we've already got that them stalwarts at the back. But I've been really impressed with Asugo, and I think that he's kind of made me understand why he's been brought into this club. Uh, I like his. I like how well-rounded he is. He feels like he can just do a little bit of everything. He can dribble, he can pass, he can shoot. He's very switched on, and that footballing IQ is something that is very interesting to see. And I like Dario Asugo. I find it difficult to write a pecking order because I feel like it's got to be based. You can do it off of ability and dues paid. And I feel like if you were doing it off of like who's done the most groundwork since getting to Chelsea, I think Romeo Lavia would have to go to the top. I think that he would be the first of the three that would probably start, and he might even be the most talented
Bless
of the
you.
lot. Thank you kindly. I think he might even potentially be the most talented of the lot or have the most potential. But I'm just so impressed by Andre Santos. I think that he looks the finished product. You could add 5 years to his age and tell me he was 26, 27, and I would believe it. He looks so calm and composed and ready. He looks like a Brazilian national team like player. He's one of them. He just strikes me as a player that's got a great career ahead of him, and I love him. So I once again, I'm just finding positives with all three. I think that my personal preference is probably Santos first, and then weirdly, probably Asugo second, and then Lavia. What the injury concerns worry me with Romeo Lavia, and although I think that he might be the most talented baller, I think that the other two probably just have that pinch on the IQ, and maybe even the eye test. And although Romeo Alavia is just so easy to watch play football, he's so calm and composed. I just thought Asugo just looked polished. You know what I mean? He looked sharp and awake and like hungry. And where sometimes with Lavia, the one criticism I will find about his game is he can seem a little bit kind of like he disappears when he's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He floats out of games a little bit, and the other two were forcing themselves into those big moments.
Yeah, I was trying to find the way to put it into words, but you kind of done so there. It is more, I'd say Asugo and Santos are definitely more effectual off the ball, or as effectual off the ball as they are on it. Whereas Romeo Lavia, he is strong. He's not a weak player by any
Hmm.
means, but he's not your tackler, your breaking up play like Caicedo, Esugo, Santos are. And I do think it will be a case of, whatever the game calls for, maybe we are 1-0 up and we need a little bit more control in the centre of midfield. And you bring on Lavia to just kind of control the tempo, play those passes through midfield. Maybe it's, 80 minutes, we're getting backs to the wall. We need a little bit more intensity. And you put Santos on to bring on that energy. Or maybe, we just need to protect a lead, or we are, under the Alamo a little bit, and you put Esugo on for that defensive reinforcement. But it feels like whatever kind of combination of those two, whether it's Santos and Asugo, whether it's Lavia and Asugo or Santos and Lavia, if you have two of those on the bench, you have a centre midfielder for every occasion. If you need to become more attacking, you can put Andre Santos or Romeo Lavia on. If you need to be more defending, Andre Santos or Asugo. And I feel like you said, Andre Santos is probably the one that ticks both boxes best. If you're thinking about it in a Venn diagram perspective, Andre Santos is probably more utilitarian, is probably more flexible and able to do an attacking role if we need it, but also a defending role. So yeah, I'd say he's probably well top three players I'm most excited to see in this Chelsea team this year, and that is primarily off the impact he had at Strasbourg last season. We all know by now just how good Andre Santos and just how highly rated Andre Santos is. So fingers crossed he can bring that into the new season. But moving up the pitch, and there is absolutely no point talking about the middle of the pitch, because regardless of whether we sign Xavi Simons or not, regardless of if Esteval drops 10 out of 10 performances, Cole Palmer will always be our our Hazard, our floater, our do whatever the fuck you want because we know you're going to perform, and we have seen that from him exceptional, even without a goal. I mean, the set pieces, the vision, the link up play with some of the attacking players. We've been really blessed to see Cole Palmer kind of pull those levels back up. Like I said earlier, there were a couple of points last season. He wasn't 10-10, but recent performances have been fantastic. And, fingers crossed he
Yeah,
can take that into the Premier League campaign.
yeah,
But the conversation will definitely be focused more on the wide players. And now we, both, I think, had one favourite attacker from the Club World Cup who we both kind of agreed was uh, definitely one of, if not the most consistent performers on our team, and that was Pedro Neto. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had said, I can't remember if you agreed, but I had said that Pedro Neto, regardless of what happens in these games, should be started against Crystal Palace. Are you the same as that? Do you still feel that that is fair, that Pedro Neto deserves to start on Sunday, or do you feel that there's a conversation for somebody to take his position?
I mean, listen, he was one of the players that I was talking about on my FPL videos. He's someone that I think that will get some early starts. I think he's done enough to prove himself, and I think that even still he's playing well. I don't think it's something that was like, oh, he did it a couple of weeks ago in the Club World Cup. He's doing it last week. I think that he's ready, and he's hungry to be a Chelsea starting player. And I think that once again, it'd be unfair to not start him. But above that, I think he's got more than the ability to really make an impact and to play once again. So I've said a million times off of both of his feet, play early crosses, go in and cut in and try and shoot. I like that danger man element that he's got to his game, that unpredictability, that spark, and where a player like Esteval kind of floats in and capitalizes off of what's happening in the game. It is Pedro Neto that is kind of forcing what is happening in those moments when he's on the ball. And that is just so exciting. It's the Pedro Neto I was expecting to see 6 to 9 months ago. It's the Pedro Neto I'm seeing now. So honestly, I think he's going to have a good game against Palace, let alone start.
Yeah, and if just to back up your point about the FPL, that little assist for João Pedro on the weekend against AC Milan, I think we can expect to see a lot more of that. He hasn't even properly built up that connection with Liam Delap yet, and that was the one that we were really excited for. Balls into the box, and you've got a proper number 9 arriving. But João Pedro showed us just what he could do with his head, and that is definitely going to be a conversation. So,
Pause.
hey, Brazy, hey, Brazy,
Pause.
hey, listen. But that's going to be the last. Actually, you know what? We'll do that now. Might as well segue into that now. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had said Liam Delap or João Pedro, who's going to start. I thought it was fairly even. Both striker brings you different attributes, but they're both very, very good quality players. But João Pedro, everything he touches turns to goals at the moment.
Yeah.
There is not a single thing he can not do in a Chelsea shirt. Did you
Hmm.
expect João Pedro to be this effective? And is there
No.
any way that he does not start on Sunday?
I was so worried about Joao Pedro coming in and being that player who just can't quite do it and gets really emotional and frustrated. He's looking like he's having a great old time in blue. He just looks confident. Honestly, we got 85 minutes in. I texted my mate and I was like, this guy's just Drogba regen. Like, honestly, the way he just feels like he's bullying and shoving, winning headers. I know that the header he scored is like a free. Well, when you look at it, it looks like no one's really on him. Watch 30 seconds, just watch him for the 30 seconds prior to that, where he's covered. He's got two men either side of him, and by the time the ball's in, he's brought them back, popped through, and then won the header with no one around it. It's just like he's just a true nine. He's what I thought Liam Delap was going to be, plus more of a threat. That long shot threat, that confident, that dribbler. I'm so overly impressed with Joao Pedro. I honestly think he gets 20, 25 goals in the Prem. I really do.
I mean, he's definitely been the overperformer in terms of what our expectations were from pre-season Club World Cup and who has outperformed what we expected. He is definitely, I think, not just you and I think the majority of Chelsea fans will be incredibly and pleasantly surprised on just how well he's done. Liam Delap, do you think he's far off? Because I mean, look, you can say João Pedro, we can sit here and say how good João Pedro is. Realistically, Delap scored. I think he got an assist in his first game. He scored against Esperance Tunis, which was a great goal in the Club World Cup, and then he scored two at the weekend against AC Milan. The first was a penalty, very well taken. We all know how good of a penalty taker he is, and also a great instinctive finish. So, how far behind? Because although João Pedro is doing fantastically, Delap is has had a great start to life at Chelsea as well.
There's a world in which there's we play two strikers up top and we just kind of figure out them wide players, and it'd just be so interesting to see how that works out. Obviously, that will take a little bit of figuring out, and it might have to do with a few injuries to wide players. But I don't think he's too far off. Once again, Liam Delap relatively overperforming. I thought that he would still be in that developmental. Let's just give him a few minutes. Nope, he looks ready, sharp. He looks like a Premier League striker. He looks hungry, and once again his little finish is just the way that he opens up and can just he does that thing, you know, and you like open up and before they've touched the
Half
ball,
turn, yeah.
it can just go left or right. He can just go either way at any given point, and it's just threatening. He just looks like a hungry goal scoring striker. Where I think Joao Pedro might have that pinch on him at the minute, and obviously a bit more Premier League proven, a little bit more game time in him. I just think that they're both quality, absolutely class, the pair of them.
No, I can't wait to see because there will undoubtedly be at least one game where we do have to try and play two up top. And, I'm thinking right now, Enzo Caicedo, Esteval Palmer, Delap, João Pedro. I mean, that's goals, goals, goals written all over it, bro. And of course, we are having this conversation without mentioning Nicholas Jackson. And that's not to say that we've forgotten about him or we don't rate him or we don't think he gets into this team. Look, I just unfortunately I believe what I read, and Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein been very vocal about Nicholas Jackson leaving Chelsea this summer. So unfortunately, until the window closes and he is still with us and he gets back into the squad, we're going to sit here and assume that he is gone for good. But look, there's a world in which Nicholas Jackson comes and competes for this position. But if I was him, I probably wouldn't bother turning up for training at this point. But on that, onto the final position, onto that left side. And well, this conversation might have been a little bit easier if Noni Madueke had stayed. But obviously, we've got two new boys on the left, or well, I say on the left, occupying the final position. It might be on the right, might be on the left. We don't know. Will Esteval Willian, will the new Brazilian star boy walk into the team on Sunday? Has he done enough from his first performance and goal on Friday night and then winning the penalty for Liam Delap on Sunday? Or has Jamie Gittins done enough? Because I was impressed with Jamie Gittins' cameo on Friday. I've got to be honest, I wasn't too impressed with him on Sunday. I think he got a lot of criticism on social media and a lot of people pushed back and said, oh, it's his first game, early doors, da da da. He showed us how good and sharp he was on Friday. So I don't want no excuses about, oh, he was pressure, new team, da da da. Did Gittins do enough to start on Sunday? Or do you think we're going to have risk it with Esteval?
Esteban is so young, you know. I think that is there's just a little bit about him which maybe we need to see how that transpires in with the physicality of regular Premier League football. Where with a player like Gittins, I can probably trust him a little bit more to try and beat a man for 90 minutes and really make impact for the whole time. But as I said earlier, my thing with Esteban is I just like the way that he capitalizes off of what's happening on the pitch. You know, he's a very big scanner. You know, he's always staring about, seeing what pockets he can fall into and where the ball's going to bounce. And I like that. I like that he doesn't mind being on the left and just licking over to the right hand side to find a little problem. And you even saw with the penalty that he won, just the way that he just saw that there was a pass on the way, sprints over to it, gets the ball and goes down for it. That will create goals long term. Whereas Bino Gittins is probably just a little bit more, give me the ball and let me try. Give me the ball, let me try. Let me try and make something happen with it now. And where we have a player like Neto, who's kind of doing that on the other side, might make a little bit more tactical sense to have Esteval on. I still think that Gittins is the player who will start majority of the games until Esteval might do something magic or you know have those moments where he comes on and he's class and you can't drop him. Also, Garnacho still, as we said, on the wing, doing his little twerking. We never know, that might cross the line. And if it does, wouldn't be surprised if he takes precedent on that side over a player like Gittins, considering the experience he's had. But I think right now it probably makes a bit safer sense to have Gittins on there for the minutes, particularly starting against Palace. But yeah, it'd be more fun, if you will, to have Esteval in that role.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose, I'd say Esteval's impressed me far more just off these Breeze cameos, and obviously, he's coming off of great form in the Club World Cup as well. But yeah, everyone's sitting here saying he's going to be a big transition period. He's new league and 18 years old. Look, he seems to be on the same wavelength as all the top boys immediately. I'm very, very excited. I think every Chelsea fan should be incredibly excited to see what he can do for us this season. But
Hmm.
as you were saying that, I did kind of, and I know I did say to you, Gittins or Estevao, it was an absolute two. But as you kind of said, oh, I think he might go safe and go Gittins. I think he might go even safer. And I think he might go 4-3-3. And I think he might go Palmer, Neto, João Pedro, and then play three in midfield. Maybe Dario Esugo behind with Caicedo, or maybe Santos up with Enzo. But let us know in the comments, A, who you think Chelsea's strongest 11 is right now, and B, who you think will start on Sunday for Enzo Maresca's side against Crystal Palace. Obviously, Premier League is well and truly back. Congratulations to Crystal Palace for winning the Community Shield. They have officially equalled Mikel Arteta's success under Oliver Glasner in 6 months. So, any Arsenal fans, you can't chat to us anymore. There are certain London clubs with the same amount of trophies in you and the same pedigree in you that wear red and blue, brother. Don't be talking about red or blue. Is London red or blue? Brother, you can't even beat them, man. The Eagles can chat to you, man. Jesus Christ. But yes, let us know what you think. There will be, as I said, plenty of content coming out this week. This will be dropping on Tuesday night. We're going to be dropping our full predictions, hopefully on Thursday, and then Charms's final chopping it up with Charms fantasy not final. I don't know why I said final pre-season. Anyway, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow at Two Blues Podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok. Stay lucky, be safe, be happy. At the Chelsea.